I do not know the party that took Major Andre, but it is said that it consisted only of a few militia.
Who acted in such a manner upon the occasion, as does them the highest honor, and proves them to be men of great virtue.
As soon as I know their names.
I shall take pleasure in transmitting them to Congress.
George Washington, Paramus, September 26, 1780.
I received this honor shortly after our capture of the gallant and spies clothing Major John Andre. George Washington himself draped this very medallion around my neck at Verplank's Point. The obverse reads but one word: fidelity.
Give me leave to remark that so deeply were my feelings in the fate of the unfortunate Andre, that I believe I have never narrated nor perused the account of his merited but inglorious death. I hope and trust this testimony will be the final trial of those feelings.
When one talks of the heroes of our revolution, the names of George Washington, Daniel Morgan, John Glover, and Henry Knox will roll seamlessly off the tongue of many an American. Countless others have fought for the cause of independence, their names known only in the lands of their birth. Now three worthy men, patriots, now have their character questioned, their reputations in danger of being forever tarnished, and their contributions vanishing altogether from the annals of history. It is my mission, perhaps my last, to ensure this does not come to pass. Members of the House Pension Committee, my name is John Paulding of Cortlandt Manor, New York. During our revolution, I served in the 1st Westchester County Militia, obtaining the rank of sergeant. Most notably, I was a member of the scouting party that apprehended Major John Andre, Adjutant General to Sir Henry Clinton, and helped foil Benedict Arnold's plot to betray us. I humbly thank you for the honor of appearing before you this day.
It is my privilege to appear before this House Committee on this most important of matters. Not long ago, many of us were serving here in this very chamber, laying the foundations of our great nation. In my 6 terms as congressman from the great state of Connecticut, I often delivered oratory that would help passage of bills that would become the laws of the land. I have never felt more compelled to speak to you than on this day.
I have come to learn that a former member of Congress, also a decorated hero of our revolution, has cast defamatory aspersions regarding the manner of the apprehension of Andre.
Like Mr. Paulding, I too serve the cause. Many of you remember me as Major Benjamin Talmadge of the 2nd Regiment of Light Dragoons. I also had the great honor of serving as Chief Intelligence Officer to His Excellency George Washington during our war for independence. However, lately, I've come under criticism for attacking the character of fellow patriots, servicemen whose efforts have previously been recognized by our Commander-in-Chief and by our Congress.
I am here to refute the claims made by Congressman Benjamin Talmadge of Connecticut and to defend my honor and that of Isaac Van Wart and David Williams, the other members of the patrol that apprehended the more unfortunate than criminal Andre.
At Verplank's Point, they presented with medals of commendation and dinner guests at the dinner table of His Excellency.
Together we thwarted Arnold's plot to deliver to the British the garrison of West Point, the key to the Hudson Valley and supply line to the New England colonies on September 23rd, 1780 in Tarrytown.
One of their rewards was a pension for life.
Many have said we not only helped save the cause of independence, but also the lives of General George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and the Marquis de Lafayette.
These 3 men were given Andre's horse, saddle, and watch as spoils of war. Congress passed a resolution on November 3rd, 1780, commending the 3 captors in gratitude for having captured Andre. Mr. Chairman, I'd like this read into the minutes, please, and this is right from the resolution, whereby the dangerous and traitorous conspiracy of Benedict Arnold was brought to light, the insidious designs of the enemy baffled and the United States rescued from impending danger. They were awarded a silver medal and an annual pension of $200.
I've always held to the maxim that a man does not ask for a handout, he makes his own way. However, I am no longer a young man and suffering from several wounds that I have received in service to my country. I am in financial hardship, and the wounds that I have received have rendered me physically incapable of fruitfully earning a living.
At the war's conclusion, the Commission of Forfeiture awarded Mr. Paulding 168 acres of land in Cortlandt Manor, New York, land worth in excess of 500 pounds.
The petition I have drafted humbly requests an increase in the lifetime pension of $200 per annum. While I am eternally grateful for the rewards and honors bestowed upon me, upon my country and Congress, regrettably it is no longer sufficient to support my many children.
Gentlemen of the committee, I concede the significance of the services rendered by Van Wart, Williams, and Mr. Paulding on September 23rd, 1780.
Since Major Talmadge's censorship of our deed, many in the public and Congress have come forward to our defense. We are often lauded as captors, virtuous yeomen and patrolmen, never as highwaymen with questionable loyalties.
However, this does not cover the entire scope of their service in the militia during our revolution.
Major Talmadge continues to perpetuate Andre's slanders upon our character, perhaps one that would take the word of a decorated patriot, a spy. It would take the word of a spy. A decorated patriot ought to be brought into question. In fact, Washington himself narrated that our conduct warrants his esteem.
What more do you desire from the country, sir? Have you not already greatly capitalized on your good fortune on that fateful day?
What point are you endeavoring to make?
That it was greed and not patriotism that motivated you to stop Major Andre that afternoon.
We were performing our duty. I signed my oath of loyalty and fulfilled my commitment to Westchester County, and faithfully and honorably.
Major Andre would have never been hanged as a spy. He provided you the booty you required.
There is not a court in Christendom that would not spurn such evidence. Each offer of reward was refused, one greater than the next.
Van Wart, Williams, and Paulding were that class of people that passed between both armies, just as often seen in one camp as the other.
Major Talmadge, you continue to perpetuate the word of a spy over these patriots that performed their duty. I had stepped into the road, leveled my musket, and ordered him to dismount. He identified himself as a British officer, up country, on Crown business, and that he was not to be delayed any further.
Traveling without a map, Major Andre incorrectly assumed he was in neutral territory not far from British lines.
The rider's countenance suddenly went pale. He identified himself as Anderson and then nervously reached into his cloak and furnished a pass written in the trader's hand.
Pass would allow him safe passage through the White Plains.
Nonetheless, we agreed it could only be a spy.
Having already disobeyed two other critical orders. One, not to venture into enemy territory, and two, not to quit his uniform. Needless to say, his situation now was most desperate.
Having found the papers on his person, he offered us several bribes.
His horse,
His gold watch,
1,000 guineas.
and all the dry goods we would desire.
But these rewards were not great enough for these so-called captors.
Nothing he could offer us. His intentions appeared nothing less than dubious.
These people only remanded Major Andre into the custody of Colonel Jameson because they deemed that reward far greater than the one for his release.
Major Talmadge, you forget that it was Benedict Arnold that succumbed to the seduction of British charms, not I. His offers of reward were refused.
Sir, have your rewards not been great enough?
Major Talmadge, an injured man, and here before Congress for pension. You claim that I was, in fact, acting dishonorably. As to the matter of my attire, you've consistently brought that into question.
You're wearing a Hessian coat, similar to this one, were you not?
That is correct.
I'm curious, how did you obtain such an accoutrement?
I was taken captive by a band of loyalists several weeks before the encounter with Andre.
Taken captive, or took your leave? During which engagement?
To my fiancée. Like General Arnold, I too fell in love with a loyalist.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
Her name was Sarah. She would become my first bride.
Mr. Paulding?
Her brother, being a loyalist, of course, disapproved of our courtship, and on one occasion, when I came to call on her, he descended upon me with a band of his loyalist friends, Rangers.
Delancey's.
Those sons of bitches had me holed up in the family barn. I managed to grab my musket and fire several volleys, keeping my attackers at bay, wounding several. They were intent on taking my life, but fortunately, my Sarah dissuaded them. Took me to a prison house in New York City as their prisoner instead.
To which Sugar House were you taken, sir?
Livingston's, Liberty Street.
I heard the conditions there were nothing less than deplorable.
The sufferings of its prisoners were beyond description. I did not remain long, scanty clothing, minimal rations.
Perhaps you're not aware, Mr. Paulding, that my brother William was starved to death on a British prison ship under similar conditions. You see, for me, the war was not about reward or glory. It was personal. How did you manage to escape?
The guards were performing a field exercise in the prison yard. Then my cellmates had created a diversion, allowing me to make a dash for the walls. I had placed a small wooden box at the base, leapt up and managed to climb over.
But how did you make your way out of Manhattan?
I staked my freedom on the kindness of a servant who sold fruit daily to the prisoners. Fortunately, she provided safe harbor for the evening. The next morning, I made my way uptown to a friend, Nathan Levinus, who kept a livery stable on Chatterton Street. It was there I procured the Jaeger coat that would allow me safe passage from the island.
It's quite a harrowing tale. But I must know, why did you retain the coat? It had served its purpose, had it not?
That coat saved my life.
Would it not have been more prudent to don the accoutrements of your militia unit?
Congressman, I was assigned a patrol in Westchester County, New York. You know full well the volatility of that so-called neutral territory.
Indeed, I led a legion of light dragoons in that very area. We were often attacked by Delancey's Tory guerrillas.
It seems now that you are accusing me of acting as a member of one, if not both, of those marauding bands.
By donning the coat of a Hessian, a Jaeger, you have proven my point, sir.
Have you ever seen me in camp with the enemy? Had anybody ever come forward to say that I've engaged in intercourse or traffic with the enemy? I signed my oath of loyalty when I was 18 in 1776.
Yet it was this very coat that led Major Andre to believe, as you put it, that you were a member of the lower party, a cowboy sympathetic to the crown, was it not?
The fact that I was wearing this very coat allowed us to gain the immediate trust of Andre, causing him to reveal that he was in fact a British officer.
It was by mere chance. Andre lacked the prudence for the task at hand. Had he produced the pass as he was instructed, you would have had no choice but let him through the White Plains and on to New York City. Fortune shined on you that day.
Not I, our cause, our new nation.
But it was not the actions of these volunteers alone that led to the capture of Major Andre. There was also Colonel James Livingston, boldly positioned 3 field pieces on Teller's Point to harass the HMS Vulture on the North River.
Major Talmadge, there's no...
There was also the militiamen that fired the very cannon at the Vulture, forcing it southward for Haverstraw, ultimately stranding Andre.
Indeed, these men...
Where are their medals? Where are their 200 acres? Their pensions for life that you have received? Have they appeared before this Congress asking for a reward for their service? Your actions, however vital, providentially came to pass due to the actions of many others on that fateful day.
Including yourself, Major. Jameson blundered and nearly ordered the so-called Anderson back to the custody of Arnold.
You're out of line, Sergeant.
Washington himself noted that he seemed lost in astonishment and knew not what he was doing.
Jameson had no cause to suspect Arnold, who was his commanding officer, of any misconduct. Anderson's past could have been forged. Moreover, he was not privy to the intelligence I had acquired.
How then were you able to convince Jameson, in fact your commanding officer, to recall Andre?
When I returned from duty in White Plains, Jameson informed me of the day's events. I must admit, I was astonished. He could not see right through the conspiracy. I offered to take the full responsibility of accusing Arnold of treason upon myself. Reluctantly, Jameson agreed to recall the prisoner. I immediately dispatched a courier to go catch John Anderson, merchant from New York.
Where did he finally catch up with the prisoner?
As per my orders, the courier rode at breakneck speed, catching up with the party at Peekskill.
Sure. Andre must have gone sullen at that moment, just as he did in Tarrytown when we ordered him to dismount.
Prisoner was remanded into the custody of Lieutenant Joshua King in Lower Salem. He was further out of range of danger than our dragoon headquarters in North Castle.
How were you able to presume that this so-called Anderson was not a merchant from New York, but a British officer?
When I saw him pace across the floor, I surmised he was bred to arms. I communicated my suspicion to Jameson and had him take particular notice of Anderson's gait, particularly when he turned on his heel to retrace his steps. Shortly after, the prisoner requested pen, ink, and paper and drafted a letter to General Washington where he disclosed his true character to be none other than Major John Andre, Adjutant General to Sir Henry Clinton.
With Andre recalled, how did Arnold come to know of his capture?
Before being recalled, Andre was being sent to Arnold's headquarters at West Point, accompanied with a letter with information respecting his capture. Strange as it may seem, Jameson insisted that the letter go on to General Arnold.
How was it then that you concluded that Arnold in fact had betrayed us?
In spite of his bravery on the battlefield, I never saw Arnold as a man of integrity. That fateful September day was not the first time I had seen the names of John Anderson and Benedict Arnold in written correspondence.
We all acted heroically that day, Major. Guided by Providence, the serpent nearly slithered from our grip.
Do not attack that man's honor, Paulding.
That British cadaver is attacking my name from the depths of Hades.
How dare you!
How dare you, Major? The nerve of you to suffer the word of your beloved spy. How dare you continuously assail my honor?
You weren't acquainted with the man the way I was.
I know that he would have sacked Washington, our cause, and even you, had he been able to lead that proposed assault upon the garrison of West Point. What are you about, man?
He'd be alive today for identifying himself as a British officer.
If that were so, we might all be drinking tea at this hour. I was not enticed by his British charm once he made that fatal error. I may not have attended Yale, Congressman, but I knew something was wrought in the state of Denmark. Thank God he resides beneath Gallows Hill in Tappan.
There was no time. I had to.
Had to dispatch the courier to recall Andre. Jameson's blunder nearly allowed Andre and Arnold's treachery to go undetected. Andre would have made it back to Arnold at West Point. They both would have succeeded.
Alas, it was Arnold that made it back to Andre's ship. It was he who should have swung from the gallows.
Andre was caught behind enemy lines and carrying incriminating papers on his person out of uniform. His fate was sealed.
The day of his execution, British negotiators docked at Dobbs Ferry to discuss Andre's fate. Washington was willing to make a trade.
Clinton would have to surrender Arnold to Washington.
All parties involved knew this was futile.
Williams, Van Wart and I all appeared before that tribunal in Tappan and were examined as witnesses. You kept watch over Andre at nearby Maybe's Tavern, why did you not come forward then with his slanderous allegations?
I doubt the tribunal would have been interested in the circumstances surrounding the capture and whether or not Andre could have met your price for his freedom.
The tribunal unanimously concluded that Andre was in fact a spy and that his fate could only be death.
He knew it was his lot to die. He was hopeful he could select the mode and receive a professional death.
Professional death?
He had written a letter to Washington requesting to be shot as a soldier. He never received a reply, but was hopeful that his request would be honored.
Over the course of that week, prior to the execution, you were able to get very close to the prisoner. Your affection for him is evidently very great.
He was a young fellow of the greatest accomplishments. All that came in contact with him were amazed by his composure and his courage.
His composure, his courage, his intent was our ruin. Both of you were learned men, with, save for politics, much in common, much more so than someone in my station at the time.
He was the idol of his superior, fellow officers, and subordinates. I never met a man for whose fate I so pity.
Andre is no more. Your defense of his character will not bring him back against to walk among the living. You tarnish my reputation and the services that I rendered to my country. I recall you fought back your tears on the morning of his execution. You were under the cast of his spell then, and you certainly remain so to this day.
When I saw him swinging under the gibbet, it seemed for a time as if I could not support it. All the spectators were overwhelmed, and many were overcome with tears. There did not seem to be one hardened or indifferent soul in all the multitude.
Not all, Major Talmadge. I was not moved.
Washington himself would not attend the execution. His Excellency could not bear to see his justice carried out.
Need I remind you that your classmate, Nathan Hale, suffered a similar fate as Andre nearly 4 years before. Caught behind enemy lines and in disguise, he was treated like a dog by the British. He asked that a clergyman be present at his execution. He was denied. The Bible that he requested was not procured, and the letters he wrote to his mother and friends were destroyed.
We have lost many in our struggle for independence. Mind your place, Paul.
Yet you saw to it that Andre was extended every indulgence. A fresh uniform and regimentals brought from New York City. His valet was summoned to attend to his every whim. A shave, a fine primping, and fresh powder for his hair on his execution day. Captain Hale was left swinging for days. How dare you have a gleam of regret in your eye?
Had he been a more seasoned officer that had the readiness to foresee the trials he would encounter.
Had who been a more seasoned
I never
officer?
felt more sensibly for the death of a person than for him.
Of
Unfortunate
whom
lad.
do you speak?
Willie.
Captain Hale.
Willie was too young to be a soldier.
With your brother.
Nate should have never delved into espionage.
Andre!
Dirty business.
You are not the sole architect of Andre's demise, Congressman Talmadge. The events that happened on that fateful September afternoon were only part of the reason we both witnessed an execution in Tapan. We both witnessed the last gallant act of Andre as he positioned that noose over his own neck atop those gallows. But you and I both know, sir, he slipped his neck underneath that rope long before the 2nd of October, 1780. Major, good day to you, sir.
There were many devoted to the cause who served their country faithfully during our revolution.
From His Excellency, their conduct merits our warmest esteem, and I beg leave to add that I think the public would do well to allow them a handsome gratuity.
Many of whom lost everything. Many with wounds more severe.
They have prevented in all probability our suffering the severest stroke that could have ever been meditated against us. George Washington.
Many who performed acts of heroism more weighty than Mr. Paulding's may be languishing in obscurity. Many who will never receive the unprecedented rewards that have been bestowed upon him.
Congress, although not swayed by the Major's oratory, ultimately denied our request for an increase in pension.
I felt it my duty to state some of the facts about Major Andre's capture before this House committee.
Many have questioned the motives and even the patriotism of Congressman Talmadge for accepting the ghost of Andre's claim that I, among my compatriots, were mere brigands. I will no longer contest Major Talmadge for allowing the ghost of Andre to denigrate my character. I would rather thank him for his loyal service to our country.
During Andre's imprisonment, I asked him what was to be his reward had he succeeded in his endeavor. He replied that military glory was all he sought. That and the thanks of his general and approbation of his king were reward enough.
After the capture and execution of Andre, I returned to service in the 1st Westchester County Militia. Before I had caught the spy, Major Talmadge ensured that he did not get away. But unlike Major Talmadge, I do not lament my role in this town.
While traveling on to Tepan, Andre became inquisitive as to know my opinion of what would become of his capture. What he really wanted to know was how he would be viewed by General Washington in the military tribunal that would decide his fate. I tried to avoid giving him an answer, for I knew that Tepan would be his final resting place.
The county of Westchester continued to be a tenuous battleground, with skirmishes breaking out on both sides until the cessation of hostilities in 1783. Once again, I was taken captive and brought to a British prison in New York City. When asked my identity, I responded proudly, John Paulding, knowing full well that that answer could very well cost me my life, as it was known to the British that I was, in fact, one of the captors of Andre. And sure enough, that response was met with a thrust of a bayonet that nearly ended me. Now I ask you, is this conduct tantamount to a highwayman that suddenly stumbled upon fortune?
Andre and I spoke of my Yale classmate, Nathan Hale. When the British landed in New York and occupied that city, Captain Hale tendered his services to help obtain information behind British lines. He too was caught out of uniform and in territory. I asked Andre if he recalled the conclusion to Hale's story. He replied, he was hanged as a spy, but surely you do not consider his case and mine alike. I could only reply, precisely similar, and similar will be your fate. He endeavored to summon a reply, chose not to speak. When he came within sight of the noose, he appeared startled and inquired with some emotion whether or not he was to be shot. I informed him that the mode of his death could not be altered. I shook his hand into the gallows and retired into formation.
On the reverse of this medallion, there is another inscription. Amor patriae vincit, which is Latin for the love of country conquers. My love for this country has always triumphed and remains as strong as it was during those uncertain times of our revolution. The censorship of Major Talmadge and the decision of Congress will never change that. The providential course of those events many years ago are convincing proof that the liberties of America are the object of divine protection. In the end, that is what really matters. As for my legacy, I leave that to the ages.